Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're going to neutrally unpack a source text that is, well, it's deeply intense. We're looking at a highly abstract framework that maps out the theoretical mechanics of psychological warfare, mental manipulation, and even spiritual predestination. The source material basically presents existence itself as this massive, unseen game of power and survival for the human mind. It's a dark, fascinating theory, and our main goal today is to decode these ideas so we can fully expose the predator's scripted games.
Right out of the gate, let's look at this cinematic analogy directly from the author. The psychology of observation is like the film in which the hero dies. It's a striking image, right? The text is warning us that mere observation can actually be a fatal destruction. In this framework, paying attention to the wrong things isn't just a simple mistake, it's a massive vulnerability. The authors suggest that getting caught up in observing at the wrong time makes the quote-unquote hero incredibly vulnerable to manipulative forces. To navigate all this, we're going to hit 5 main pillars today. First, the psychology of observation. 2, exposing predatory scripted games. 3, the mechanics of transacting. 4, cosmic consequences and fate. And finally, 5, the ultimate psychological war. All right, let's jump straight into section 1, the psychology of observation. So, what does this actually mean in the text? Basically, the psychology of observation is framed as a really dangerous state of distraction. The author asserts that during life's most pivotal windows, just observing or communicating can literally stop a person from processing vital information. In these crucial moments, getting distracted by what's happening around you can cause life-threatening situations. On the flip side, if you avoid this trap, you amplify your rewards. Think of your attention as a critical defensive resource. If it gets hijacked, you lose your edge completely. Which brings us to section 2, and really the core of what we're looking at today: exposing predatory scripted games. Here is where things get pretty wild. The author outlines a concept they call scripted techniques of hypnosis. In this theory, manipulative forces, which the text sometimes calls criminals or sinners, use these scripts to essentially transfer their own thoughts directly into the mind of a target. It's a mechanism of absolute predatory control. It implies this highly calculated, completely manufactured scenario designed specifically to warp the target's reality. And the text gives us the actual blueprint for this. It's a 3-step scripted game. Step 1. The predator transfers thought via these hypnotic scripts just to breach the target's mental boundaries. Then, step 2. They create wildly abnormal situations. The text frames this as a literal experiment to condition the victim's mind, making them react in predictable ways. And finally, step 3. Diverting accountability. They manipulate this setup so perfectly that they completely bypass the authorities' radar, allowing them to persecute the target without any consequences. It is a literal blueprint for entrapment. To drive home just how severe these predatory games are, the text proposes a really stark metaphor. It suggests that even severe abuses, like things you'd see in forensic science cases, are sometimes actually engineered experiments. In this view, they're designed to reflect the behavior of a conditioned, manipulated mind. The whole act of a criminal transacting with a victim is just used to hide the predator's true intentions. By exposing this, the author wants to show exactly how far these forces will go to manufacture suffering. Let's move on to section 3, the mechanics of transacting. The crucial point here is that these aren't random attacks, they're highly calculated transactions. According to the text, these psychological transactions hold very specific rewards for the criminal. They artificially strengthen certain beliefs to forcefully program their targets. And what's the ultimate goal of all this programming? The text states it's to quote-unquote prove that someone's specific sin is unrighteous and punishable by death. It's a rigged game. They make the victim look guilty, which justifies destroying them in the eyes of anyone watching. Okay, section 4, cosmic consequences and fate. This table is where the framework zooms way out to a cosmic scale. We're talking universal physics here. The text claims that as observers are attracted to death and destruction, it literally changes the space-time fabric of the cosmos. And if sinners capture data to reinforce a victim's guilt, the author warns the universe responds by destroying the human body. But if a targeted individual realizes this and plays their own game of death to change behavior, their soul gets rewarded. So we're dealing with massive cosmic stakes based on psychological manipulation. The framework establishes this incredibly stark dichotomy. On one side, you have the human of higher consciousness and intelligence. On the other, you have lower-order conscious beings, which are identified as the predators and criminals. The author argues that these lower-order criminals actually unite their revenge into an experiment specifically to evade the spiritual consequences of harming someone with higher intelligence. It's framed as a war of attrition between elevated awareness and base manipulation. For that higher intelligence, the text suggests that being forced to observe and interact with these predators actually collapses their material reality. It causes them to suffer. Because of this, the author states that cursing the seeds of these enemies is a predestined, completely necessary response to their sins, a form of spiritual self-defense. Ultimately, this intense clash of minds and manipulative games is framed as a grand playback, a divine experiment orchestrated by God to test the soul through the material nature of the universe. Which brings us to our final pillar, Section 5, the ultimate psychological war. The text drops this striking question right in our laps. Can you survive in this psychological war? It frames daily existence as this literal battleground, where a mature behaviorist has to challenge their very soul to destroy manipulation, all while the criminal is desperately acting just to save their own soul from death. Survival entirely depends on recognizing the scripted game being played against you. And the author posits this cyclical, almost reincarnative view of the struggle. They claim the conscious mind is essentially dead because it forgets the past. True realization, according to the text, only arrives in the next birth when you finally recall your lessons. That's when you wake up and see your enemies for what they really are, forces hatching plans to destroy you while pretending to be your teachers. It's that classic, incredibly manipulative shift from being a rescuer to a persecutor. Ultimately, the source concludes with this chilling realization. The author states unequivocally that the image projected by these forces is a trap, and that transacting with lower-order conscious beings is death. No mincing words there. It's an absolute stark warning to sever ties with predatory manipulation if you want to preserve your own spiritual and mental integrity. So, taking all this in, we're left with a pretty heavy question to ponder. If we view our interactions through this lens of predatory, scripted games, we have to ask, how vulnerable are your own mental boundaries to the unseen scripts operating around you right now? Exposing the predator's games and recognizing this architecture might just be the very first step in surviving them. Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep questioning the narratives presented to your mind.